Damian Ollie Lillard. Very interesting name. 9-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, All-Star Game MVP, and a part of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. But there's also one more thing you can consider him at this point: retired. In last year's postseason, he would end his short tenure as part of the Milwaukee Bucks due to an Achilles tear that would end his season prematurely, and then even seeing him get waived by the Bucks to make space for Miles Turner. With the entirety of the NBA world waiting to see where he'd go next as he's recovered, he would end up going back to where it all started in Portland, Oregon on a 3-year deal to end his career as a Trailblazer. I was confused at this decision at first, but I think it's safe to say that Dame Time has officially made peace with his career and just wishes to end his career on his own terms. A very commendable way to do things, as he has accomplished probably as much as he could. But I want to go back to the very beginning, when Damian Lillard was a 4-year college player at Weber State in Utah, going to a very fortunate situation in Portland to truly see how his career ended the way it did. How the Portland Trailblazers failed to do enough to get enough help for Dame, talk about the highs and lows of Damian Lillard's career, and just come to an understanding about his career in general. The good, the bad, and the ugly. By the end of this, you'll have a better appreciation of Damian Lillard, the man who never gave up on the Trailblazers despite how against the odds he's always was at all times, and of course, the man who never, well, almost never, ran away from the grind. With that being said, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like the video, as we are now officially on the road to 100,000 subscribers. So be sure to subscribe to be a part of that, and of course, to catch more videos. But as usual, this will be a long one, but you already know who it is. Rally! Before we go any further. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. It is finally that time of the year. Summer is ending and fall is approaching. So you know what that means. Football is finally here, and it's going to be a great season. And that's why I teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook for this video to tell you what you can do with your first full slate of Sunday football. Sign up using promo code Alvini, and new customers bet $5 to get $300 instantly in bonus bets and $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. An absolute can't miss deal. And with an extra $300 in bonus bets, it will bring a whole new experience to your Sunday, Monday, or Thursday night football viewing experience. So my question is, what are you waiting for? New customers use promo code Alvini and bet only $5 to get $300 in bonus bets and instantly get $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Bring more spice to the start of the football and fall season, while all of America's favorite sports will be back in session. Thank you again to DraftKings for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it.
With the 6th pick in the 2012 NBA Draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Damian Lillard of Weber State University.
The Portland Trailblazers probably didn't know it at the time, but with the 6th pick of the 2012 NBA Draft, they would choose one of the best players in their franchise history, and his name was Damian Lillard. In the 2010 era of the NBA, his story becoming a top 10 pick is still pretty rare. A 4-year college player at a mid-major school in Weber State, where he would explode in his senior season and truly become one of the best guards, if not one of the best players in college basketball, despite his lack of achievements from it. And while prospects at that level are usually discounted in some way, when talent is there, it's undeniable to keep ignoring it without some level of intrigue. 24 points per game, making 40% of his threes as the main scorer, and a legitimate 3-level threat. And when you also add in the factor of the guards at the top end of the 2012 class, wasn't all that intriguing unless your name is Bradley Beal or Dion Waiters. It's the perfect storm for Damian Lillard to be drafted as the 3rd guard in the class. But what's even better for Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers in general is the fact that Portland is jump-starting a new era with him on an already built roster, but it didn't come without its own issues. For one, they hired Terry Stotts recently to become the new head coach of the future. Second, the Brandon Roy era ended as he recently retired from the NBA due to his health. And third, the Blazers are trying to desperately patch up their issues after the fact with many moves. But they are lucky because their bust of an acquisition in Gerald Wallace, who was regressing hard, turned into Damian Lillard. Originally, that 6th pick belonged to the Nets, but since they were bad also, the Blazers were rewarded in garnering Lillard, so Blazers fans, be very glad for that. The Blazers originally landed at the 11th pick, but with all that madness turning into Damian Lillard, he gets to inherit a team that still consists of a perennial all-star in LaMarcus Aldridge, underrated role players in Wesley Matthews and Nicholas Batum, and JJ Hickson, for the 3 fans watching this video who is a fan of Hickson. He was a solid big man at one point, but he was also recently traded there. Now, while this isn't a great core, if things go at a decent pace there can be some potential here, especially if Lillard continues his play from college into the NBA. Expectations for the Blazers and Damian Lillard going into the 2013 season were pretty realistic. The Blazers weren't expected to go anywhere considering all they did was add Damian Lillard to a team that won 28 games last year. And for Dame, all the eyes were on Anthony Davis, who took over the basketball world with his historic freshman season at Kentucky and now being drafted to New Orleans to save the Hornets. Be sure to check out that video because his time in New Orleans was probably more interesting than you remember. But while everyone had their eyes focused on Anthony Davis, a certain someone would steal the spotlight from him in his very first game of his NBA career.
Against Dallas, Howard running the court before the defense gets set.
Lillard, deep three.
Now remember, last night,
Damian Lillard back in for Portland.
Yeah, Lakers got 29 points in the first quarter last night.
Lillard foul line.
Yeah.
Steve Blake is in.
And they're getting a lot of...
Lillard, lob to the rim to Leonard, who guides it in.
Now,
Lillard had his choice there,
Yeah.
either side of the hoop. Let's see him. Lillard trying to put a cap on it here. Lillard to the rim, scores! Calling a pick for Lillard. Lillard, little hesitation, step back 2, got it again. That's tough to defend.
yes, it is.
Against Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, and Pau Gasol, Damian Lillard came into his debut and looked some of the best players at their positions in the 2000s in the eyes and balled out. 35 minutes, 23 points, 11 assists, and a 10-point win against the Los Angeles Lakers. This performance makes him the first rookie debut since LeBron James to put up 21-9 and the 3rd player ever to put up 20-10 in their debut, joining Oscar Robertson and Allen Iverson. Out the gate, the Blazers have found a new Brandon Roy, and yet again, he was another 4-year college player who exploded onto the scene in his senior year and got picked with the 6th pick. Funny how life works. Now, the main question will be, can he stay healthier than Brandon Roy, a very low bar to jump over, and can he eventually lead them to the promised land for the first time since Bill Walton did it in the 1970s? But unlike a Michael Carter-Williams random stray, I know, Damian Lillard would continue to show his future potential of how great he can be, earning more and more confidence in the NBA and getting used to NBA defenses night by night as his numbers and performances showed for it. Soon after New Year's, we witnessed his best game of his career so far in a showdown between him and Stephen Curry, where Damian Lillard finished with 37 points and 7 3-pointers made in a loss. But again, showing that soon-to-be superstar potential he has within him if given the opportunity. But Damian Lillard's rookie season that started off as anything but ordinary would end in the exact same way. He cleared every Rookie of the Month award in the Western Conference, made the 5th most threes in the NBA that year as a rookie, finished top 15 in scoring, top 20 in assists, and wildly enough, played the most minutes in the league as a rookie. He would also break Stephen Curry's rookie 3-point record, won the Skills Challenge during All-Star Weekend, and most impressively of all, winning the Rookie of the Year award in unanimous fashion, being the 4th ever rookie to do this. If a rookie season like this were to happen in the modern day NBA, especially with social media around, Damian Lillard would be hailed as one of the next all-time greats in the making. He was thrown into the fire in his rookie season and absolutely showed his worth that whole time. And the thing is, this will be the worst he will be in his entire career. Now, while the Blazers themselves would finish with a 33-49 record and ending their season on a crazy 13-game losing streak due to last-minute injuries to LaMarcus Aldridge, Nick Batum, and Wesley Matthews, they again have something to build on. They were hovering around 500 until that happened, and while they would have most likely missed the playoffs still, it showed that they have the building pieces to make themselves into a potential contender again. But in all reality, that lies in the hands of LaMarcus Aldridge and the 2013 Rookie of the Year, Damian Lillard. So, after the historic rookie season of Damian Lillard, the only thoughts you have as a Blazers fan is how much better will this get for both Damian Lillard and the team itself. The roster last season wasn't much to be impressed about outside of the starting lineup. Then through the draft and free agency, the front office would at least try to add some pieces to this roster. In a draft, they grabbed another elite 4-year guard in CJ McCollum with the 10th pick to be a hopeful future contributor, and they also traded for the 31st pick in the 2013 Pac-10 Player of the Year, Allen Crabbe, to continue to beef up their guard rotation. But while the Trailblazers free agency period is quiet, it would prove to be impactful trading for their new starting center in Robin Lopez and also acquiring Mo Williams from free agency in August. While it wasn't a lot, they would attempt to fix some of their clear problems from last year, like being one of the worst defenses in the NBA and also fixing one of the worst bench units in the league that caused Damian Lillard to play the most minutes for a rookie since Elvin Hayes, the last rookie to lead the NBA in minutes. And again, while their roster didn't seem at first glance to scare you too much, those few changes were all they needed to get the Portland Trailblazers right back on track. By the end of November, the Blazers were 13-3 and the second seed in the West, surprising quite literally everyone. This is still a Western Conference full of some of the biggest stars of the 2010s in it after all, but with a 11-game win streak from November 8th until the 25th, the Blazers showed the league that they were back to business, and it was highlighted by 3 amazing players: Damian Lillard, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Wesley Matthews, each of them all having career years in some way, with Terry Stotts finally getting his more perimeter-centered offense working on all angles. And that's exactly why GM Neil Ashley hired him for the job. Damian Lillard himself is having a relatively similar season compared to his rookie year, averaging 20 points per game, but the real improvement came from around him. LaMarcus Aldridge is having a career year, taking a league-high 22 pointers a night and scoring 23 points per game with 11 rebounds a night. Damian Lillard and Wesley Matthews are among one of the best three-point shooting duos in the NBA, destroying teams from the perimeter. Nick Batum continues to surprise everybody with his all-around offensive and defensive play, now being treated as a secondary playmaker, and their prize jewel of the offseason, and Robin Lopez's overwhelming defenses with his offensive rebounding skills, grabbing 4 a night, being an absolute steal for the Blazers. As a high-octane offense relying on three-point shooting and extra possessions with an average defense, all you can try to do to beat them was to outscore them, and sometimes you're just not going to do that. One of their most signature games of the year was their December 14th game against the 76ers, where they scored 139 points in regulation and making a franchise-high 21 threes in a game, and 19 days later doing the exact same thing with another 21 threes against the Charlotte Bobcats, with Damian Lillard leading the way, going 6 of 6 from the three-point line. With this new identity and their all-around roster with Terry Stotts leading the way, by the All-Star break, they'd own a 36-17 record and own the 4th seed in, again, a loaded Western Conference. And for their efforts and exceptional play, Damian Lillard would make his first ever All-Star game alongside LaMarcus Aldridge, showing these two to be a real duo in the future of Portland. At 23 and 28, they have many more years to go after Larry O'Brien, and it will be very interesting to see how far these two can go together. Also, as an added note, Damian Lillard would be as entertaining as he always is, playing in every single event in All-Star Weekend, something you'd never see in today's NBA. Also, he's the first and only player to ever do this. But returning back to the regular season, the Blazers were back to business as usual. Now, while they weren't rolling in the lead like they were very early in the season, they continued to stay consistent within the top 5 of the Western Conference to comfortably be a playoff team, and would even finish with their best record since the 2009 season, going 54 and 28, a 21 game increase from the season before, and a real return to form for the franchise. And once again, the duo of Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge will be signified as one of the best duos in the NBA, both being headlined on the All-NBA third team together. If this team is going to go anywhere, it'll be off the backs of one of the most underrated stars of the era and one of the best young players in the league who hasn't even reached his prime yet and has very much more to build off of. But if they want to really show their worth, it is time to see how they do in their first ever playoff run together. First, against the 4th seeded Houston Rockets, led by James Harden and Dwight Howard, and ironically enough, a top 3 shooting team in the NBA. Matchup wise, this team is rather similar to each other and how they want to win. So now it really just comes down to who can outdo the other at their own game and which one of the two duos will play the best in this best of 7 series, especially in the debut of Damian Lillard. In game 1, we would see the tone for this crazy first round series go on to be set. Both teams are going at each other's neck with a masterclass of offenses on both sides. LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard are taking turns torching the Rockets defense, while the Rockets are enjoying the help of 3 20-point scorers and Jeremy Lin's impact off the bench. And it even lasted until the final moments of regulation, where Damian Lillard would tie the game with 29 seconds left to give the Blazers some relief and hope that they just needed one more defensive stop to either get a game winner or go into overtime. But after James Harden draws a foul and makes both free throws, the Blazers are only a few seconds away from potentially losing this game. That was until we see the best player of the series come through.
7.8 to play. And it's Matthews for the lead. No. Put back. No again. Tapped home. Do you believe it? We are all leaving at 106 with 2.9 to play.
In an attempt to win this game right then and there, Terry Stotts calls for Wesley Matthews to make a 3 out of the timeout, but he misses. And as Damian Lillard misses the initial tip-in, LaMarcus Aldridge somehow, someway make the tip-in to send the game to overtime. And some clutch free throws would end the game, as LaMarcus Aldridge would finish with 46 and 18, and Lillard would finish with 31 to end an amazing game 1. No matter what they threw at LaMarcus, he was absolutely unstoppable all night, and due to his impact, it made Damian Lillard's job 10 times easier to score, with him being a really large threat to the Rockets defense also. Game 2 would see more of LaMarcus bullying the Rockets with another 43 points to win, 112 to 105, showing real hope that this series is all in the hands of Portland to control, having home court advantage. Game 3 would see a slip up though, despite Nick Batum sending the game into overtime, as James Harden would come alive for 37 points and the Rockets snagging 22 offensive rebounds. But Game 4, with the chance to gain the infamous 3-1 lead, or for the Rockets to get their home court advantage back, would once again make this series one of the best first round series in a long time. 3 20-point scores for the Rockets and 4 on the side of the Blazers. All offense, no defense, and only one team can take this game away to control this series in some way. And the stakes get even higher now too, with a very key basket made by Dwight Howard off a James Harden pass to send this game into yet another overtime, making an already crazy game even crazier. But once again, in the OT period, it will be controlled by Portland to take the infamous 3-1 lead, and they're only one game away from going to the second round for the first time since 2000. Yes, it has been that long. This new era can really be the start of something amazing, but it wouldn't start yet. Game 5 will see the Blazers losing Houston by 10 due to a key performance from LaMarcus Aldridge having his worst game of the series, scoring only 8 points, and Jeremy Lin scoring 20 off the bench. But now, back at home and not wanting to risk a Game 7 in Houston, this is a must-win game for Portland. And this would truly be one of the slowest paced games of the series, with everything on the line for both teams. James Harden would start things off with 13 first quarter points, while Dame and LaMarcus would combine for 21 in the first, and by halftime, it was 58-56 Rockets, with James Harden having one of his best games of the series, and LaMarcus Aldridge waking up from his performance in the last game. And by the fourth quarter, the Rockets were still only up by 1, and it was anyone's game to win. Wildly enough, this fourth quarter was headlined by 2 people going back and forth at the start of it. 13 fourth quarter points from Dwight Howard and 8 from Robin Lopez, going back and forth in the paint, doing what they can do to keep this game alive. But in the final minute of the game, the Blazers still couldn't find a way to take the lead. Nicholas Batum would get us prepared for another overtime period, making a mid-range with only 40 seconds left, but we continue to see more and more of the craziest first round series this year had to offer.
We're down to 10 seconds left. Harden loses the handle, got it back. Harden between the legs, Harden the jumper, off the rim, no good. Lopez trying to keep it, Parsons scores with 9/10 left. Somehow he found it.
Just like that, in a blink of an eye, the Rockets are 0.9 seconds away from ending the game and taking this series back to Houston, where they will be ready to get the Blazers to blow a 3-1 lead due to the Blazers not securing the most important rebound of the game. But 0.9 seconds leave more than enough time that you think to get a basket. There's enough time to get a quick catch and shoot, a lob to the basket, or even a tip-in. So neither the game nor the series is over yet, but the Blazers still need to finish the job somehow.
For Houston, 9/10 left. A 3 wins the series. It's Lillard. He got the shot off. Lillard, good! Good! And the Blazers win the series for the first time in 14 years.
Damian Lillard was the quietest star in the fourth quarter. In the 12 minutes he played, he only attempted 2 shots and missed both. And despite of that, he was trusted to end this series with the first option in the play, calls for the ball, and starts his legacy with the Rip City Revival, finally making it past the first round for the first time in 14 years. It's an amazing time to be a Blazers fan, seeing your first round pick only last year bring so much impact so fast to being a leader for the future so soon. But this is where the fun ends, because in the second round they faced one of the best revenge stories in NBA history, the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. After losing to the Miami Heat last year, the Spurs are looking better than ever, and the Blazers are unfortunately in their way of them returning to the finals to beat the Heat, if they even make it there. And while they don't own one person who will smack you in the game, they have many players who will cut you and will eventually make your team bleed out. And losing the first 3 games of the series will show that fact to be very much true. The Blazers have a lot of work to do and need more help to put them in that same position. Even worse, both Dame and LaMarcus will get locked up by the Spurs, and it made these games impossible to win. They'd escape game 4 with a solid win due to the Spurs not being there on offense, but the Spurs don't play with their food. They'd end up crushing them in game 5, 104-82, showing the Blazers still have a lot of work to do to truly become contenders like them. But either way you look at it, this is still something to be proud of as a unit, franchise, and fan base. Damian Lillard would only get better. LaMarcus is in his prime, and you are given every bit of confidence that the front office can bring something better and bring more depth to this team, and eventually your time might come if the pieces start to fall in place. So far so good. Now it's time to maintain it and make it better, and it's time to see if Damian Lillard can take another step towards superstardom and lead this franchise back to the promised land. The duo of Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge just achieved something that the Blazers have been able to do for the first time since the start of the 21st century, and that's making it to the second round of the playoffs. In a Western Conference where nearly half the teams in the playoffs can be threats to make it to the finals, you really either have to be the best of the best or be extremely lucky to make it to the finals, and the Blazers are on their way if they can make their team better. Damian Lillard is already on the way of being a star, but they just have to know what true greatness was, losing badly to the Spurs last postseason. With this in mind, do the Blazers do anything to make their team even similar to the Spurs that just won the championship in the 2014 NBA offseason? Well, they have a lot of money stuck in that starting lineup, so this free agency period will be dedicated towards their bench. NBA journeyman and former Trailblazer Steve Blake would join back on a 2-year, $4 million deal, and one-time former All-Star Chris Caveman Kaman would leave the Lakers to join the Blazers on a small 2-year deal to back up Robin Lopez. Outside of that, it's a bunch of nothing. But at the same time, the only player that they lost was Mo Williams, so you really can't say they regressed. If anything, they just got a little bit better. But the expectations for the Blazers are still realistic with their lack of team movement. However, just like last year, the Blazers yet again went on another hot start. Last time, it was a 10-game winning streak near the beginning of the season that catapulted them near the top end of the Western Conference. And this year, it's them winning 13 out of 14 games and starting off with a 17-4 record. And crazy enough, because of how the Western Conference was, there were still 2 other teams better than the Blazers at this point of the season. Like last year, it was the same formula that allowed the Blazers to overwhelm teams night after night. They own one of the best three-point duos with Damian Lillard and Wesley Matthews. They also, on the opposite end, have one of the best three-point defenses in the league at the same time, and alongside LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard being a top 10 scoring duo. Damian Lillard improving more as a playmaker, taking a tiny leap in his 3rd season, and the good times just keep on rolling. But things were not always sunny in Portland. Robin Lopez would fracture his foot and miss over 20 games in December, and even LaMarcus Aldridge and Nick Batum would suffer some injuries after the start of the new year. Due to that, they once again start hovering around that 4 to 5 spot in the Western Conference standings, which is fine. In fact, they are on a pace to win yet another 50 games in the season, but that place in the standings is once again showing who the true rulers in the West are. With that being known, the front office will try to bring in some help to boost the team's offense On February 19th, 2015, the Blazers would trade Will Barton, Thomas Robinson, and a 2016 first-round pick to receive back Aaron Aflalo, who would provide even more of what the Blazers want on the perimeter, and that is three-point shooting. And with that trade deadline move, we once again go into the All-Star break where the Blazers for the second straight season would have 2 All-Stars on their team. LaMarcus Aldridge made the team as a starter for the second straight year, and Damian Lillard would earn his second straight appearance as a reserve, replacing the injured Blake Griffin. I don't have to say it again, but I will. This duo has a lot to provide inside and out, and the Blazers are still waiting for Damian Lillard to take that leap as a scorer, because some of you can still argue that he is the same player he was as a rookie at this point. A lot of high highs and low lows, waiting for him to just be consistent or rise above the label of a small guard who can only put the ball in the basket. He's getting there, but as of right now, it is a slow process. He was just very much ahead of the game to come into the league. As long as the team is winning though, it can be ignored, but you can't judge what the final result will end up being. However, his three-point shot is starting to falter for whatever reason, going from 39% last year to 34% this year. But again, when he needs the ball out, he will. Like his signature 43-point performance against the Spurs in a triple overtime win where he made the game-tying 3 to send it to overtime in the first place, and then putting up another 40 bomb 4 days later against the Thunder, and yet again another overtime victory. He's getting there. We're just waiting for the consistency. Speaking of which, the wheels are starting to fall off after the All-Star break. Wesley Matthews would suffer a season-ending Achilles injury, now making the Blazers lose out on one of their best shooters and most valued defensive tool. The Blazers due to this would go 21-20 after the All-Star break and regress defensively hard. And despite the very choppy end of the season, the Blazers would still finish 51-31, and due to that, the power that is in the Western Conference, they were famously one of the 7 teams who finished with 50 or more wins and were the 6th seed despite this record. Now on one hand, 50 wins is nothing to scoff at in the slightest, but on the other hand, your team is showing themselves to be falling apart at the end of the day, and it's making you a target for whoever you get in the first round. Once again though, the Blazers would own another All-NBA talent in LaMarcus Aldridge, who finished on the second team and even finished 7th in MVP voting. But this would be the first season since 1999 where the Blazers would win the Northeast Division, so you do have something to be proud of, at least a little bit as a unit. But this is the Western Conference, so you can't be too happy. Due to them slipping after the All-Star break, they have a 3 versus 6 matchup, one of the most annoying teams in the NBA, at least when it comes to the players. I'm not saying they're annoying myself. The Memphis Grizzlies. Beating them 4 times out of 7 means you have to deal with the interior defense of Marc Gasol, the first-team All-NBA member, the perimeter defense of Tony Allen and Mike Conley, and then you have to deal with the bully himself, Zach Randolph, in the paint. This is the grit and grind Grizzlies, and they will torture you to your wits' end if you're not prepared. And the Blazers, who are already in a rough spot at the end of the season, are going to need a lot to go their way to beat this team. LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard especially will need to tap into what made them great last year against the Rockets and not falter to a great defense like they did last year against the Spurs. But many people seen it happening, with ESPN experts voting in a sweep that the Grizzlies will handle the Portland Trailblazers. And it was for the exact reason you're thinking. Game 1, the Grizzlies shut down Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge to combine for 15 of 55 shooting and a 186 loss. Game 2, the All-Star duo combined for 12 of 36 and lost by 15. And in Game 3, they were saved by Nick Batum, who made 6 threes as the Blazers tried to rely on others, but it wasn't enough as LaMarcus Aldridge shit the bed once again, going 6 of 18 to lose in a very close 115-109 game. The expected outcome ended up being a reality as the defense of the Grizzlies are torching the Blazers in every way possible, taking out their main engines and forcing someone else to be the reason they lose. Game 4, they at least win 1 game in Portland, with Damian Lillard scoring 32 and having both Myers Leonard and CJ McCollum be real contributors, making 5 threes and combining for 31 points together. But that isn't the norm here, not at all, because back in Memphis, it all comes back down to earth, with LaMarcus getting shut down for 5 of 18 shooting, Nick Batum going 2 of 12, Damian Lillard going 1 of 8 from 3, and the only positive player was the second-year CJ McCollum, who scored 16 of his 33 total points in the third quarter alone. But once again, the Blazers would lose in 6 in a close one, losing the series 4-1. Good, but not good enough. This is where the Portland Trailblazers might be stuck in right now. Too many of the Western Conference teams just have too much store to work with talent-wise, and of course, the Blazers don't have that type of talent yet. The Blazers have a nice system, but their talent is just not on par with the cream of the crop. But going into the offseason, everything can change. LaMarcus Aldridge, Wesley Matthews, and Robin Lopez are all looking for new deals alongside a lot of their bench, and this team can be reconstructed in a way that can create a much better unit to compete in the West if they choose it to be. Of course, if an extension was made to LaMarcus Aldridge going into the summer, you'd be a lot more confident because a lot of these people can be lost for nothing and leave the Blazers with absolutely nothing to work with. This is going to be an interesting summer for Damian Lillard and the Blazers, but as most of us know, this summer is going to change everything. The summer of 2015 is a crucial point in the Portland Trailblazers lore for many reasons, and a lot of you know exactly why. But for the people who don't, let me educate you and start back to where we are in the timeline. The Blazers have just lost to the Memphis Grizzlies in brutal fashion, and there's a lot on the line going into the summer. LaMarcus Aldridge, Wesley Matthews, and Robin Lopez are all up to be unrestricted free agents in the summer, and considering how their cap situation was at this point, a lot can happen here. Either they can retain them all to keep trying at this struggle that is winning an NBA championship, keep a few and replace a few, or the worst option, lose them all. Well, at the beginning of the summer, the Blazers were already showing that they wanted to have at least a little bit of change. June 24th, 2015, the Portland Trailblazers would trade away longtime Blazer Nick Batum for the talents of Gerald Henderson and lottery pick Noah Vonleh. Henderson will be serving as another guard scorer, and Vonleh will be more big man depth and hopeful potential in another new situation in Portland. But the main thing about this trade is the huge red flag that LaMarcus Aldridge is rumored to be leaving the Blazers and joining a more established team. According to the reports, it's either San Antonio, Dallas, or Los Angeles. So they're trying to open up as much money as possible to pay him the max. As you can imagine, LaMarcus is done losing and is trying to jump ship ASAP to a more favorable franchise who either already has the tools to win now or is a destination that can bring in talent naturally. San Antonio is fresh off a championship 2 years ago and owns Kawhi Leonard, and Dallas and Los Angeles are two top-tier destinations in the West. They can lose people like Wesley Matthews and Robin Lopez, but an all-NBA player like LaMarcus Aldridge, losing him would be like having your heart ripped out. You cannot live without him. And in anticipation of the worst, they continue to make more moves. During the draft, they take Arizona forward Rondé Hollis-Jefferson and trade him to the Nets for Mason Plumlee and Pat Connaughton for even more cheap depth. But soon the free agency period arrived, and the worst of the worst would happen. LaMarcus Aldridge would sign with the San Antonio Spurs on a huge deal, leaving the Blazers in ruin. Now it's the Dame show officially, and his teammates are looking the worst it has ever been. Nico Batum was traded earlier, Robin Lopez skipped town to New York, and Wesley Matthews joined the Mavericks. Now, even worse, all of his starting lineup disappeared just like that. You're basically starting from ground zero, and GM Neil Oshley has to do something about it because tanking is just not an option because their first round in 2016 belongs to the Nuggets in the Aaron Aflalo trade. So, what do they do to make up for this bad news? They try their best. Ed Davis, a rabid offensive rebound, was signed for 3 years and $20 million. Al-Farouq Aminu, a long and athletic wing, was signed for 4 years and $30 million. They trade a future second-round pick to the Magic for Maurice Harkless, a defensive wing, and they signed back Damian Lillard to a max 5-year and $120 million contract from his rookie extension. And that's it. Yes, that is it. Damian Lillard has a brand new team, and it is not looking good. It's so bad that ESPN themselves had them predicted to go 31-51. And to be quite honest, I do not blame them. There is so much uncertainty on this team. It's crazy from all over that we're going to have to see Damian Lillard lead a team and be the sole best player on it. And with the day one lineup of Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Myers Leonard, Mason Plumlee, and Al-Farouq Aminu, that team sounds like a team worthy of a lottery pick. But as you think the Blazers would falter due to their team, and it wasn't a great start of the year as expected, by New Year's, the Blazers were 14-21 and the 9th seed. Why only the 9th seed? Because the Western Conference for this 1 year was going through a big old injury bug and a lot of moves, and it's not looking good for the bottom tier playoff teams. But for the Blazers in particular, they're just not the best talent-wise. But the man of the hour is doing his thing. Damian Lillard has finally taken that leap necessary to make the Blazers a threat, but it sucks that the team around him isn't the best for them to actually win games. With averages of 25 points, nearly 7 assists, and making 3 threes a night on a 37% split, Damian Lillard has truly become one of the elite guards in the NBA, especially since he finished both top 10 in points and assists. But it wasn't just him. CJ McCollum had some very good games last year, now has the starting spot after being mainly a bench player, and never looked back. He was Damian Lillard's right-hand man, averaging a ridiculous 20 points per game, making 40% of his threes, and was a secondary playmaker. CJ McCollum went from a bench player with little going on to him to a fringe all-star in 1 year, and it all came down to just needing some playing time to show his worth. He showed what he could do in the playoffs a few times last year versus the Grizzlies, and now he will be a long-term piece and become the Robin to Damian Lillard's Batman, gunning for the Most Improved Player award. Now, for everybody else, it's still pretty rough. This team was all about getting buckets, and there was not much they can do on offense. A top 10 offense, but a bottom 10 defense. If the Western Conference was back to normal, the Blazers would be deep in the basement. But due to how weird it was for this one and only 1 year, the Blazers are flirting with a playoff spot. In fact, they go into the All-Star break winning the last 8 of their 9 games and finish a strong 27-27. Not amazing, but at the time, it was the 7th seed. Just imagine nowadays, after the 2025 season, if a team went 500 and was somehow the 7th seed, the world would go into flames. But they are successful for the most part and competing for a playoff spot, all of the backs of one of the best backcourts in the NBA, with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, as the Blazers get lucky with yet another 4-year college guard drafted in the lottery. But this point of Damian Lillard's career would start a new weird arc, and that's his all-star snub years. Despite having one of his best seasons, no, actually his best season of his career, and even being a playoff team, Damian Lillard would not make the 2016 All-Star team. Granted, last year he made it in as an injury reserve, but you have to remember the West is stacked and people are going to be missing. The West owned guards like Russell Westbrook, Stephen Curry, Kobe, who was more of a fan vote thing, I understand, Klay Thompson, James Harden, and Chris Paul. Damian Lillard, according to the coach and media vote, wasn't deemed as good or worthy enough, so he is left out of the All-Star game. But due to that, we'd see a whole new side of Damian Lillard, and that's post-All-Star break, Damian Lillard.
They're number 1 in assists, so they really do a great job of that.
McCollum drops down the 3. He's 9th best in the NBA in terms of three-pointers made. Harkless to Lillard from way downtown.
Well, if Curry can do it, Lillard can do it. He rolled instead of usually he pops.
2 for 1 time for Portland. Lillard up and under 3, hit another one.
But Curry he's a magician at getting that shot away.
Lillard trying to do the same. He hits a 3 and he's fouled. That's the 4th on Curry. With the windmill. Go, go, go. Lillard gets past Barnes, banks it in.
Oh, there's just no doubt about that.
Lillard for 3. Good! Back and forth they go.
Done. They lead the NBA in fast break points.
Lillard for 3.
Yeah.
Good.
Those outside shots.
Here's Lillard against Rush. Long 3 again is good again. Holy cow. 36 for Lillard.
Wow.
Lillard puts his head down, fights to the rim and scores. He wanted the and 1. He's got 40 points, 7 assists, and 6.
San Antonio is 24-0 at home.
And by the way, the Blazers still play them twice in Oakland this year. Lillard again.
Yeah, you did the right thing. Pull it back and see what you got.
Lillard for a career high. Yes, sir! And Von Lay says, I got it. Out to Lillard.
Remember now, Blazers.
Look at the crowd. Lillard, heat check. Oh! It's not fair.
It's not fair, You heard the commentator. 51 points, 7 assists, 6 steals, and 9 made threes. This was Damian Lillard's retaliation for not making the All-Star game, going one-on-one with the best guard and best team in the NBA and smacking them. And when the Warriors were already out of the game, he kept the beating going until he hit the 50-point mark. People seeing this as the NBA poking the bear and the bear striking back. And this wasn't a one-time thing. He kept it going all throughout the post break. In 5 out of 6 games after he scored 50, he'd scored 30 or more. He'd scored 50 points again versus the Raptors on March the 4th and 41 4 days later, and even led his team to a post All-Star break record of 17-11 that shot the team from the 9th seed all the way to a 44-38 5th seed. Some argue this is what the team needed to take that huge leap into a comfortable playoff position, but man, you just truly had to be there. And for his late season efforts, despite not making the All-Star game, Damian Lillard would finish on the second team All-NBA squad. But it wasn't just him. He had teammates who helped get this team to the point in the season where the Blazers were thought to be dead in the water. CJ McCollum finished as the most improved player, averaging 20 points per game, being a top 20 scorer, and was top 10 in made threes. Again, showing he is going to be a great right-hand man to Dame Dollar. Now they're just waiting to get a third piece sometime soon because the rest of the core plays their roles, and it's not exactly the best of the best because only 2 other people scored 10 or more points tonight. Allen Crabbe, the 6th man, and Al-Farouq Aminu. But you know what? A fringe all-star in his 3rd season is something that literally any team would take. But again, a 44-38 record, not bad. You can build off of this. A 5th seed, a top scoring guard duo with cap space to spare, and a date with the 4th seed of the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Clippers. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. And even better, Blake Griffin has only played 35 games this year due to a brutal in-season injury and is recently coming back off of it. But despite of that, all but one person on the expert panel from ESPN noted for the Clippers to win the first round matchup. And at first, they were absolutely right. The Clippers were smacking the Blazers as expected due to both Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum getting locked down by all defensive first team member Chris Paul and dealing with all defensive first team member in the paint, DeAndre Jordan. We already seen how Dame deals with top defenses from their matchup last year from the Memphis Grizzlies and the year before with the San Antonio Spurs. But remember, they are facing the Los Angeles Clippers, and nothing is easy when you are a Los Angeles Clipper. Yes, I'm a Clippers fan saying this. Yes, you'll eventually get me making videos on both the Lob City era and the 2-1-3 era. Just not right now. Anyways, back in Portland in front of their home crowd, Damian Lillard and CJ knew that if they were to lose here, this series is over. 12 fourth quarter points from Dame, 15 second quarter points from CJ, and all together they combined for 59 points to win Game 3, 96-88. And Blake Griffin continues his struggles when it comes to scoring. And the struggle continued into Game 4 as Blake Griffin re-injured his quad, which quite literally ended the season for the Clippers as one of their main scorers be taken out. And for even extra insult to injury, because CP3 ended up breaking his hand in the same exact game. I hope you know it's hard for me to talk about my team, even if I'm supposed to be unbiased during this. Anyways, so a series that was controlled by the Clippers gets turned around real quick due to injury, and the Blazers never look back. 49 points for Dame and CJ combined in Game 5 for a 108-98 win. In Game 6 back in Portland, the Blazers would finish the jobs off the backs of 48 combined points from CJ and Dame, taking down the hobbled Clippers 4-2. Sometimes in life, you just take what you can get, and the Blazers took the easy series due to the crashing and burning of the Clippers' health and walk right into the second round. But the Blazers have already shown that in the face of a healthy contender, they are just not there yet as a team. So how about another healthy contender and last year's champions, their Golden State Warriors, with the All-NBA trio of MVP Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. This team gets talked about enough, so you should already know what this team is about. 73-9, best offense in the league, a 50-40-90 score, and a bulletproof system with Steve Kerr at the head of it. No one's seen the Blazers even touching the Warriors in this series, but the main thing people wanted to see was the duel between Damian Lillard and Stephen Curry, two of the best three-point shooting guards in the league. Well, that would have been the case if Curry wasn't down for the first few games because of an injury, but anything to make the series easier for the Portland Trailblazers. And easier it wouldn't be. Even without their MVP playing, the Warriors took a commanding 2-0 series lead, and guess what? Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum were going through hell. Game 1, 8 of 26 from Dame and 5 of 17 for CJ, and in Game 2, despite the good games from the duo, the Warriors simply just played better. Game 3, the Blazers would bounce back in Portland in their usual fashion with a 40-point masterclass from Damian Lillard, alongside 22 points from CJ McCollum and 23 points from Al-Farouq Aminu, showing life against the best team in the league and one of the best of all time. But that's when Stephen Curry decided to return back to the lineup and reminded everybody who he was, and scored 40 points off the bench in his return game, seeing the Blazers lose. And now back in the Bay with their backs against the wall, the Blazers needed a hero. Damian Lillard starts the game with 12 first quarter points for a 3-point lead going into the second. They keep their lead going into halftime, and then Klay Thompson happened. 16 third quarter points and looking unguardable as a shooter to give the Warriors a 4-point lead. Now, the Blazers are still in this though, and CJ McCollum and Stephen Curry were going back and forth at each other's necks to take the game. But as Stephen Curry shoots his last 2 free throws to score number 13 and 14 of the quarter, the game is over. The Blazers would lose 125-121 and end their season in the second round. All eyes, though, are looking at Damian Lillard. They escaped the Clippers series with him shooting under 40% from the field, but against the Warriors, he was just not able to play up to par. 22 points per game and shot under 40% as the primary option. Either Dame needs help, Dame needs to be better, or Dame isn't made to lead your team to the promised land. But those critiques are probably still a bit too soon to make. He has shown what happens when he plays against good defense, and it isn't the prettiest to look at from his past series against the Spurs, Grizzlies, Clippers, and now the Warriors. This cannot remain a trend if he expects to win a championship with the Blazers. But the Trailblazers still have plenty of more chances to make this work. Dame and CJ are still under the ages of 25. They have a lot of money to play with going into the offseason, and they are just a few moves away from being a real contender. In fact, the NBA is increasing their cap to create an entire new market for teams to play with, and a lot of people are going to get paid. But just like this last offseason we talked about for being infamous, this next one is going to be even 10 times worse for Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers. The Portland Trailblazers are at a good spot as a franchise right now. It's officially time to buy in. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are an all-star duo numbers wise. The front office has been rather frugal with their contract situation, saving money for something big, and the summer of 2016 is iconic for one reason. The NBA salary cap for every NBA team is increasing from $70 million to $94 million, a 74% increase in cap, and the league and its players are going crazy. Eventually, I'll make a video talking about the effects of this one-off season has had on many people, but for now, let's just focus on the Portland Trailblazers. GM Neil Oshley knew they are 1 or 2 key moves away from being a competitive roster, and this cap increase is going to help them get there because there are plenty of people they want to sign to put their team on the map. But the main names they offered max contracts to was Dallas's Chandler Parsons and Miami's Hassan Whiteside. Chandler Parsons coming off a decent season with the Dallas Mavericks where he showed more of his offensive talent as a scorer, being a 40% three-point shooter, and would only make the Blazers more lethal on the perimeter. However, his injury history is a bit of a concern, so paying him a max contract has a lot of potential to blow up in their face. And then you have Hassan Whiteside, who legit exploded onto the NBA scene with the Miami Heat and led the NBA in blocks while also seeing himself make the All-NBA defensive second team. Getting both of these guys on a team that is already lethal offensively would make them pretty decent, but the money was just not enough. Hassan decided to stay in Miami because, duh, it's Miami, Florida, and Chandler Parsons signed with the Grizzlies due to the head coach at the time, David Fitzdale, and assistant JB Bickerstaff. I'm not joking, by the way. He literally said he would trust JB Bickerstaff with his life. But the biggest targets of free agency are now gone for the Portland Trailblazers, and it puts them in a bad spot. It's time to win now at this point, and tanking is only going to be a waste for the talents of CJ and Damian Lillard. And you rather as well use that free money that came with the salary cap increase because everybody else is investing and you have to do the same or fall behind. So what do they do from here? Well, just like last year, they do their best. Evan Turner, the second overall pick of the 2010 NBA draft, is currently looking like a bust, but he had a solid year with the Celtics off the bench as a do-it-all forward. The Blazers would pay him 4 years and $70 million for that. $17 million a year for a bench player. Okay, what's next? They've re-signed CJ McCollum and Myers Leonard to their rookie extensions. Okay, pretty solid. Obviously, they are contributors to the team, but there's also second-round pick Allen Crabbe, who is looking to go to the Brooklyn Nets for 4 years and $74 million. If the Nets want to overpay for a bench shooter, then so be it. The Blazers will clearly just let him walk away, right? What do you mean they brought him back? Well, that's a lot of money for someone like him. Outside of that, they re-signed Maurice Harkless to a harmless, thank God, 4-year and $42 million deal. Signed NBA champion Festus Ezeli to a 2-year, $50 million deal that would immediately be wasted because of a off-season knee injury that would shut him down for the entire year. Yeah, anything that can go wrong did go wrong for Portland. They struck out on both of their main targets, signed someone who doesn't even fit the system for a lot of money, and didn't bring in any talent that would even improve the team altogether. The only way this can be celebrated is if they get another MIP winner somehow in this season, but with the roster they got, you can argue that things will be even worse than last year because their competition this time around has only gotten better, and with no changes to the team in any major fashion, the Blazers were back to their usual system. It's time for an all-out offense based on Dame and CJ with no defense to speak of, but this year, Dame and CJ were on another level.
Superb job on Dennis Schroeder on Sunday against Atlanta. Lillard from way outside nails the three-pointer. That's about 30 feet away.
Lillard marches it down on Booker. Lillard going all the way, flips to the left hand and scores. Oh my goodness, they call the foul. 9 remaining. Nuggets by 2. They throw it. Nobody is there. Lillard scores. He will defend Lillard with 5 seconds. With 3, Lillard makes his move on Fareed for the win. Let's go home. Let's go home. With 3/10 of a second remaining. Free sends it to CJ, who's getting a screen from Plumlee. Fakes off that, crosses over between defenders, and laid it up and in.
McCollum a deep 3, and he drills it. A new career high for CJ McCollum. He's got 39.
Poise of a longtime veteran has 24.
Oh, what a shot! What a shot!
Pass. Plumlee going in. McCollum has it. Splits 2 defenders. Got it off in time with .3. Unbelievable shot making here at the end of the game. Harrison 3/4 court, and it's all over.
This year would start the peaks of both Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. 27 points per game for Damian Lillard and finally unlocking that consistent 3-level scoring ability. And CJ McCollum, after winning the MIP, is only getting better after a full year on being on top of the scouting reports. Every single game you had to deal with this duo that averaged 50 points a game together, was 8 and 15 on the 3-point field goal list, and could score in any way they want to. In fact, a stat that I didn't know is that CJ McCollum in this year in particular was top 15 in made 2-pointers, being that lethal inside and out the arc. But remember, the Blazers had a horrendous offseason, and the aftermath showed on the court. By New Year's, the Blazers were 15 and 21 and with a 10th seed, and it wasn't looking like the Blazers could really make much happen when Dame and CJ were the only threats on the team, and everybody else is basically a role player, especially when you have some of those role players making way too much money. However, Neil Oshley would try and remedy one of these problems that they couldn't fix in free agency, and that was getting a new center. For the entire season so far, the Blazers have been trusting Mason Plumlee to start there, and you can argue he's a bottom 10 to 5 starting center in the NBA. The Blazers need something new, and an opportunity of a lifetime will present itself on February 13th, 2017. The 23 and 32 Trailblazers, desperate for a long-term center, would trade Mason Plumlee and a second-round pick to the Denver Nuggets for the Bosnian beast Jusuf Nurkic and a 2017 first-round pick. This amazing deal only happened because of the rise of Nikola Jokic, who nabbed Nurkic's starting spot, and the Nuggets, knowing they had to get rid of the now peeved Nurkic, who can't play power forward alongside Jokic, is now not enjoying a reduced role. So now Nurkic joins the Blazers to be the starter once again, and can now continue his development as a starter in this league, in a potentially risky move for the Blazers considering he's more unproven than Plumlee. But considering their current position, the Blazers don't have many options, and a first-round pick was included alongside it, so it's a win no matter what. However, another old friend would visit the Blazers once again, because the 2017 All-Star teams were announced, and Damian Lillard, in his best season to date, is not on the team for the Western Conference for the second straight year. This time around, people are legitimately calling him a snub, but it doesn't matter. You poke the bear, and the bear is going to bite. 33 points in his first game after the break versus Orlando, back-to-back games of 33 and 34, 39 versus Phoenix, 49 versus Miami, and for the final cherry on top, a career and franchise high of 59 points versus the Utah Jazz. And just like last year, the team had a way better post-All-Star break record, which landed them on the 8th spot of the Western Conference over the Denver Nuggets with a record of 18-8 and a final record of 41-41. So yes, despite the great run, Damian Lillard had nearly scored 30 points per game after the All-Star break. The Blazers are still not there yet. Allen Crabbe is very overpaid, putting up the same numbers as he did last year with his new contract. Evan Turner is making big money off the bench alongside Crabbe, and the best move the Blazers made wasn't even in the offseason. It was picking up Nurkic, who is looking like a steal in his new home in Portland, doing everything asked of him, and even is showing off his playmaking skills in the post, averaging 3 assists a game, making the offense even more lethal. But the problems remain the same. The Blazers are still nowhere near championship contention talent-wise, and as the 8th seed, they have the absolute worst chance of winning a ring, as their first matchup would be every team's worst nightmare during this era. The Golden State Warriors with Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, who just won the DPOY, and now added alongside this already unstoppable trio, Kevin Durant. I don't even want to waste your time here. Despite a 41-point explosion from CJ McCollum and 34 from Dame, the Blazers simply couldn't keep up with the talent of Golden State. 0-1. Game 2 was over by the end of the third as CJ and Dame got locked up big time, 0-2. Game 3 was actually competitive, with the Blazers having a 3-point lead going into the fourth, with Dame and CJ turning up again. But 14 fourth quarter points from Steph would shut down their hopes, and now the Blazers are down 0-3. And finally, one more giant middle finger to the Blazers, with Stephen Curry scoring 37 points in 29 minutes, and the Warriors scoring 45 points in the first quarter, tied for the most ever scored in a first quarter in the playoffs, and having a 20-point lead after the first. That right there, dear viewer, is how you make Portland fans leave the game early. And if you did, you made a good decision, as the Blazers never even came close after that point, and now they have been swept. Now listen, just like how LeBron ran the East for a time, a very long time, this Warriors team was not going to be taken down without an equally as powerful team. They'd only lose one game onto their way to winning that championship, for crying out loud, this year, but the Blazers still need to try to make something happen, because even if their chances are low, you'd rather have little chance than zero chance. But it all came to be because of their signings in the offseason this year. Things are looking bleak with the Warriors on their current rampage, but all Damian Lillard and CJ can do is keep trying and hoping for the best from their front office. Maybe something miraculous can happen that'll serve the Blazers in some way, or maybe just like the LeBron rivals in the East, they're just gonna have to wait their turn. Or maybe the front office can make another move that'll put the Blazers in the top of the Western Conference. Baby steps, Portland. Baby steps. The Blazers are a playoff team, but are still galaxies away from being a real threat to win an NBA championship. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and Jusuf Nurkic is a decent start, but with so much money stuck in the hands of Evan Turner and Allen Crabbe, there's no way they can do anything serious unless either of them are gone, or in the best case scenario, both of them. Either their talents need to be undeniable, or their system needs to be absolutely impeccable. And due to both of them being on the team, their offseason was as quiet as ever. With 3 first-round picks in their hands of the 2017 NBA draft, they trade 2 of them in Harry Giles and Justin Jackson for the 10th overall pick, Zach Collins from Gonzaga. Zach Collins was a very interesting prospect coming into the draft, as he was a bench player who provided a lot of impact in so little time. So you know the word that was going to be placed on him during the draft, and it was going to be potential. He can shoot threes, has nice touch in the paint, blocks shots like it was nothing, a solid rebounder, and best of all, he is 7 feet tall. Another decent piece if they can make something out of him, and all things considering, the Blazers have had a decent track record so far when it came to drafting. And they have been bailed out in the offseason, somewhat getting rid of Allen Crabbe in the offseason, trading him to the team that originally wanted him in the Brooklyn Nets for Andrew Nicholson, which they then waived to open up more money for the future and obviously try to get some better pieces. But that also does mean there would be no signings for the Blazers to add to their team, alongside no further trade. And with Neil Oshley being extended to the 2021 season, the Blazers are still trusting him to get something done, and time is ticking for him to do so. But for now, the Blazers are efficiently stagnant. Same core roster, same top 3, same mediocre ceiling. You probably can't expect CJ and Dame to get better, and unless someone takes a leap, the Blazers are at best a second round exit. The Warriors with KD and Steph are still alive. The Rockets are building something amazing, and the middle of the pack of the Western Conference is going to stay as bloated as it will ever be. So let's just skip to the midpoint in January, because obviously it's going to be the same old, same old. The Blazers are in a similar spot to last year, 22-21, the 8th seed, and still trying to find some rhythm. And as usual, you cannot blame the main duo at all. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum putting up similar numbers to last year, and a full year of Yusuf Nurkic is looking great, and he will for sure be the center of the future. But where they fail is everywhere else. If Dame and CJ wasn't putting up the numbers that are according to their standard, it's going to be a rough night. And unlike last year, there isn't a trade deadline move that be made to make this team any better, but there is a spark being made after January the 14th. And you already know who is trying to put the entire team on his back. From January 16th until the All-Star break, the Blazers were 10-5, and it was due to Damian Lillard going off for nearly 30 points per game in that 15-game stretch, and he will put up some amazing performances on that route. 31 points against Phoenix, another 31 against Dallas, another 31 against Minnesota, another career 50 bomb against Sacramento, and beating a fully healthy Warriors team, scoring 44 points. This was the version of Damian Lillard that the Blazers needed all year, but better now than ever, especially considering how the Blazers usually play after the All-Star break, but perhaps this time around, this won't be the case. Damian Lillard, for the first time in 3 years, has returned back to the All-Star game, and some argue that his streak of games put him as a dark horse candidate for the MVP award for the league. Is he actually going to win it? No chance, but hey, some votes here and there are good for the legacy. But when you think the rampage of Damian Lillard was over, it was only beginning. Remember, the post All-Star break Blazers always play well with Damian Lillard. And this time around, after the All-Star break, the Blazers would have an amazing 12-game winning streak that shot the Blazers all the way up to the 3rd seed after starting it as the 7th seed. And as usual, Damian Lillard had his hands all over this, averaging 29 points per game and making 40% of his threes, staying the unstoppable menace he is after the All-Star break. Now, of course, you wish things like this were going to be an all-season thing, then people can talk about the Blazers in a higher regard, but maybe this is a new leaf of things this time around, as the Blazers would finish their post-All-Star break 17-7 and overall 49-33. This was a decent turnaround from the year before and sets them up perfectly in the playoffs for that sweet home court advantage that they haven't had in such a long time. But before that though, the man of the hour has to be celebrated for possibly his best season in his career, and for the way he put his team on its back. Damian Lillard, for the first time in his career, will be headline on the All-NBA first team and finish 4th in the MVP race, receiving 207 out of the 1,010 total votes. No first place votes though, but again, still a great place to be in your 6th season in the NBA. But that settles it. Damian Lillard is officially one of the best in the NBA. To be a part of the All-NBA first team means that you're one of your best in the position and in the league overall, and especially considering that you claim that spot over the likes of Stephen Curry, and also Russell Westbrook, CP3, and others, but mainly Stephen Curry. But come playoff time, you now have to prove the doubters wrong, that you actually deserve this spot and that you actually are one of the best of the best. You can only get away with your team isn't good enough excuses when losing time and time again. And with Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers as the 3rd seed in the West, he's expected to rematch the defending champions in the 2nd round, the Golden State Warriors. A Golden State Warriors team he's been putting buckets on in their 3 appearances in the regular season, outplayed Stephen Curry, and beat them 2 out of the 3 times they met. But first, they have to beat the New Orleans Pelicans in the 1st pick of the 2012 NBA draft, Anthony Davis. But this isn't your average 6th seed. This is the 6th seed who's only 1 game removed from you in the standings. So this may be a 3 versus 6, but it's more like a 4 versus 5. And this team isn't anyone you can overlook. Despite DeMarcus Cousins going down earlier in the season, you still have to deal with Anthony Davis in his prime, the fastest pace in the NBA, and the lockdown backcourt of Drew Holiday and Rajon Rondo. Historically, we know Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum don't really react well to great defenders, but this time around, can they actually end that narrative? Even ESPN is rooting for you with their panel voting in a sweep for the Blazers to clear this out in the 1st round. Will this finally be the year that the Blazers make some real noise? Well, game 1 will return all the narratives that people are unfortunately used to. Damian Lillard against a good playoff defense is just not effective as you want it to be. 6 of 23 from the field for 18 points is unacceptable for someone of his status, especially now that we've seen the year after year after year worth of evidence of someone that is always going to be downplaying himself against a great defender or a great team defense. And it's just going to be raps for him and the Blazers if he keeps succumbing to the same narrative. They would proceed to lose game 1 only by 2, and that was only because CJ McCollum almost brought the Blazers to victory with 14 points in the final quarter, but it wasn't all on Dame because the pick and roll game between Rajon Rondo and Anthony Davis was unstoppable. 17 assists for Rajon Rondo and 35 points for Anthony Davis. It's bad enough that Dame is having trouble scoring. It's even worse that Nurkic is so slow-footed that he is absolute food against Anthony Davis. This series might even be harder matchup-wise than anyone could have ever imagined for the Portland Trailblazers. Game 2 was more of the same, 7 of 18 from the field, 7 turnovers, and only 17 points for Dame in a 9-point loss. Game 3 in New Orleans, Dame would only muster 20 points on 5 made shots and topped it off with 8 turnovers and a 17-point loss, now seeing the Blazers down 0-3. And in Game 4, it was more of the same. Kept under 20 points, CJ McCollum was the more reliable scoring threat, and the Blazers lose again in a shootout, 131-123. So in the most shocking way possible, the 1st team All-NBA member, Damian Lillard, averaged an abysmal 18 points per game, shot 35% from the field and 30% for 3, while turning over the ball 4 times a night. This is a new low for Damian Lillard, and the narratives of him being unreliable in the playoffs will continue to stick, and the team not being good enough will only go so far when Damian Lillard can't perform when it's time for him to do so. So at this point, what can we expect from Lillard? Is he ever going to take the Blazers to the top, or is it really going to take a true God squad to bail him out at times due to his usual shortcomings? Granted, we've seen it from CJ McCollum from time to time. Now, he just probably needs even more help, and it shows. And with the 2019 NBA season coming soon, there is a lot going for it, especially as Damian Lillard is coming into a contract year soon. It's time for the Blazers to impress Damian Lillard in some way, Damian Lillard to get over his usual habit, or for Damian Lillard to consider moving on elsewhere like LaMarcus Aldridge did a few years ago. After losing in the most heartbreaking fashion in the 1st round with the best season of the solo Damian Lillard saga, something has to give. Damian Lillard had shown that he has the best player on the team. It gets pretty dicey to rely on him when he is one bad matchup away from being shut down and losing in the playoffs. All these great moments in the regular season where he has some of the best streaks of his career will not mean anything to most people when he cannot provide that same impact when it matters most. In fact, if you're some teams in particular, you want to see Damian Lillard in the playoffs if you have the means to shut him down. So with that being known, what can you do as the GM of this team? Well, you can can only try to bring Damian Lillard more help and hope for the best, or realize that maybe he isn't the man who can get the job done. And don't you ever think that Neil Oshley was even thinking for a second that he was going to split this core, because during the offseason he clarified many times that the core of CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard were going to stay together, and he was going to try his best to get them a ring. So as usual for the Blazers, their offseason remained as quiet as ever due to their many problems with their roster. First drafting the fifth-year high school player Anthony Simons, which a lot of people say who looks like me, late into the 2018 NBA draft, and trading 2 second-round picks to obtain Gary Trent Jr. from Duke, both providing more of what Terry Stotts likes from his perimeter players. And in free agency, it was just getting more shooting, adding threats to Nick Stauskas and Steph Curry. And with those very little moves being done, you got to stay level-headed about the future of the Portland Trailblazers coming up in this season. And ESPN will do the same, predicting the Blazers to be the 10th seed of the Western Conference with a 43-39 record, as they remain as unpredictable as ever. They are always shown to have slow starts and blazing hot ends to a season that creates a very interesting team to make sense of it all. But will they be the same old team every year? Will they finally rise above that and be the team everyone can see them being in the regular season, but this time all year round? Well, the Portland Trailblazers would absolutely shut down the noise and look like they're on a revenge run of sorts after the way they got shut down last year in the playoffs. Well, with a blazing hot 10-3 start to the year, this is what people wanted to see. A full year of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum doing what they do best, and the NBA was ready for it, as Damian Lillard was looking as sharp as ever and CJ doing the same. But leave it to the Blazers to have their peaks and valleys, losing the next 10 out of 15 games and almost ending back as a 500 team by New Year's. Things would pick right back up like how it was in the beginning though, going into the All-Star break 34-23 and fought their way all the way back to the 4th seed in similar fashion to last season. But in an attempt to add some firepower to what will be a brutal postseason most likely, the Blazers became a part of the trade deadline. February 4th, 2019, Wade Baldwin, Nick Stauskas, and 2 second-round picks will be sent to the Cleveland Cavaliers for the services of Rodney Hood after an interesting year with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and now being booted since LeBron is in LA now, to provide more 3-level scoring and hopefully getting him back to his Utah Jazz form. And later on, they add a surprise name in the buyout market in Enes Kanter, who will be an amazing upgrade to their backup center position. As one of the winners of the trade deadline, even if it's in a low-key way, these 2 upgrades will hopefully mean a lot come playoff time, where anything can and will happen. But you know how this is going to go down. Damian Lillard for the 3rd straight year is a part of the Western Conference All-Star team, but due to a rare injury from him, he didn't play in that game. The Blazers are prepared for war at this point now, so you know what to expect. A 19-6 post-All-Star break record, Damian Lillard breaks his own season 3-point record and makes it to the All-NBA second team, and the Blazers end the year with a 53-29 record due to their hot start, and this is the best season in the solo Lillard era. However, this is the same song and dance at this point. The Blazers are, to many, still the Blazers come playoff time, and against the wrong team, they are easily going to lose in the first round, even if they do have a good regular season. And it was going to be even harder this time around, as Jusuf Nurkic would suffer a fractured tibia and fibula, leaving Enes Kanter, a notoriously bad defender at the center position, for an entire playoff run playing major minutes. And just like last year, the Western Conference is still very congested record-wise, so they'll be facing the 6th-seeded OKC Thunder with Russell Westbrook, MVP and DPOY finalist Paul George, and a top 5 defense in the NBA. To some, this is yet again another trap and matchup a team can exploit. But to others, this might actually be the opposite, as the Thunder were not as good as they was originally thought up to be. Then when you add in the fact of the on-court beef what Russell Westbrook and Damian Lillard had for each other, this had the potential to be a great series between 2 teams and 2 rivals. And due to the narratives, the past record of the Blazers, and Paul George headlining as the best player in this series, all but one person voted for the Blazers to win this first round matchup. And I honestly don't blame them. Have you been listening to what's been happening in this video? Because it was up to Damian Lillard to shake off the narrative on his career so far, and this could be yet another stain on it. But as we start at the beginning with game number 1, this will be the start of something great, as Russ and Damian Lillard were going back and forth with each other, but Portland as a team would dominate all game with a first quarter lead of 39-25, with Damian Lillard and CJ scoring 23 of those first quarter points. The Thunder would try to come back, but the Blazers would hold on with a 104-99 win. win, with Damian Lillard's 30, CJ McCollum's 24, and Enes Kanter's 20 being more of a scoring threat than Nurkic. But game 2 will be the true signifier of how this series is going to go, because with Paul George dropping the ball in game 1 and Russ going 2 of 20 in game 2 and throwing 6 turnovers, this may just be the fact that Russ and PG as a duo is a recipe for disaster in the playoffs. And with the disaster being shown on national TV, the Blazers were going to take advantage. 62 combined points from Dame and CJ, and a 20-point win for your Portland Trailblazers. Russell Westbrook led the Thunder to a win in game 3 though, but in game 4, things went back to normal with another combined 51 points from Dame and CJ, with the Thunder duo crashing and burning yet again with another near 20-point win for the Blazers with no close games in sight. But with game 5, we finally get it. A true battle. A MVP candidate versus one of the best guards in the league going head-to-head in the game to remember, with this series on the line for the Thunder. 15 first quarter points for PG and 19 for Lillard making 3 threes. Then Damian Lillard drops another 15 in the second to give the Blazers a 1-point lead going into halftime. Then Paul George strikes back with 11 to give the advantage to OKC by 2 going into the fourth. By this point, PG has 31 points in 3 quarters and Dame has 42, with both players giving us a masterclass offensively. Obviously, this series has been anything but this altogether, but this one game makes up for it as the Thunder are trying to force this series to continue, as Damian Lillard is trying to end this with an all-time performance. Skip to the final minute, the Blazers are down 2 until CJ McCollum makes a long jumper to start the most stressful 57 seconds of the night. Either the Blazers can escape the Thunder, who actually has PG playing like an MVP again, or the Thunder can regain some confidence and take this back to OKC to try to force a game 7. But Paul George in the next possession would continue his rampage with another jumper, scoring his 36th point of the night to give the Thunder back the lead, forcing Terry Stotts to call a timeout to game plan the most important 39 seconds of the game. After the timeout, Damian Lillard would tie the game immediately, speeding right past Dennis Schroeder and scoring over PG to continue this masterclass, scoring his 47th point of the game. But with 32 seconds left and a 9-second differential, if the Thunder use the entire shot clock, so much can happen here. Whether the Thunder score or not, there is plenty of time for the Blazers to dictate how this game goes. But leave it to Russell Westbrook to make a bonehead move and not pass it to the hot hand and try to end the game himself, trying to see if he can score on Rodney Hood and not getting a foul call, giving the Blazers all the time in the world to either end this series or see us go into overtime. Well, the hot hand for the Portland Trailblazers got the ball, and he was going to have the last say on how this series went down.
Portland has a timeout. Lillard, a chance to send the Thunder home. Lillard, long-range 3, and it's good! At the buzzer! Damian Lillard! Are you kidding me?
To this day, no one can understand what possessed Damian Lillard to shoot a damn near half-court 3 to end the game. But if you can imagine something here with me, let's try to look over this play one more time. Damian Lillard is one-on-one with possibly one of the best defenders in the league that season, whose sole purpose is to shut him down for this one play and this one play only. And Lillard has 3 options. Call a screen and hope to get a favorable look or pass, try to drive by a DPOY favorite, or take advantage of Paul George giving him all the space in the world and where he thinks is in his range and shoot. And he picked the 3rd option and quite possibly changed his entire career outlook to many right then and there, splashing one of the best playoff game winners ever and making his 50th point of the night and his 10th 3-pointer. Paul George may have argued that was a bad shot, but to Dame, it was light work. So they beat the OKC Thunder and are on their way to the 2nd round for the first time since 2016, and due to them being the 3 seed, they won't see the most possible finals matchup in the Golden State Warriors until the conference finals. So who is next? A team the Blazers did a lot of moves with in the past, the Denver Nuggets, the 2nd seed, one of the most sound teams in the NBA, and again, one of the best defenses in the league. After his dominance in the first round, people seen this as the Blazers series to win if he can keep this up. And at this point of Jokic's timeline, he wasn't as well known or treated as much of a threat at the moment, so many people still viewed the Nuggets as being a few years away and a great young team in general. And that can be shown with the ESPN panel voting in favor for the Blazers to win by a good majority. Now it's time to see if the Blazers can hurdle the Nuggets and make it to their first conference finals since the 2000 season and take a new step in the Damian Lillard saga. But things were only looking like a ghost of the past was returning, and that's Lillard looking worse in the hands of a good team defense. Down 2-3 to the Nuggets, they are doing an amazing job keeping Lillard in the box, but with two good scores, you now have to deal with the other. CJ McCollum has been the reason the Blazers have been able to win games, scoring 41 in their Game 3 win and leading the team in scoring in their Game 2 win. Damian Lillard would have an amazing Game 1 despite the loss, where the Nuggets team Nikola Jokic torched their paint for 37 points, but in their other two losses, he just wasn't up to code, and now the Blazers are drowning from it. Game 6 in Portland was do or die though. Win and take the series to 7 in Denver, or lose, and that moment in OKC will only remain as that. Just one good moment in an otherwise okay season that didn't go anywhere. But in Portland, the Blazers absolutely played with real urgency. Rodney Hood balled out for 25 points off the bench, making his trade so very worth it. And Dame and CJ balled out for the first time in the series at the same time with 62 points in a crucial 119-108 win. So while forcing the Game 7, it's crazy to think that this is the first Game 7 Damian Lillard has ever been in, and what a place to have it. Winning here means he makes his first ever conference finals in his career, putting him ever closer to one of the premier players in the league. But with a halftime score of 48-39, things are looking horrible for the Blazers, and you know who headlines it: the 1 of 8 from Damian Lillard, who only scored 7 points. But again, the focus on Dame has allowed CJ McCollum to score 15, but this game might be over if this continues. But with an amazing 14-point third quarter from CJ McCollum, it brought the Blazers only down 1 going into the fourth, and in the weirdest way, we would see one of the worst contracts in the NBA in Evan Turner turn up in the fourth quarter for 10 solo points with CJ's 8 to win Game 7 100-96, with CJ McCollum scoring 37 points in the final game and Evan Turner scoring 10 of his total 14 in the final quarter. So you know what this means. For the first time since Y2K, your Portland Trailblazers will make the Western Conference Finals and have a date with the Golden State Warriors. And not just any Golden State Warriors team. This is the Golden State Warriors team with Boogie Cousins and KD, but due to prior injuries in the playoffs, they are out, and the Warriors are now a lot weaker with the original Big Three remaining and not a lot of depth behind them. But before we can get to that series, everyone started to talk about the Damian Lillard performance in Game 7 that nearly lost in the game, going 3 of 17 in the game overall, and in the series averaging 40% from the field and 28% from 3. The same concerns stick with Damian Lillard no matter what. He is very fortunate that CJ can step up when he needs to, who crazy enough seems to be the more consistent scorer between the two come playoff time. But with both sides having their own set of problems, who does ESPN see going to the 2019 NBA Finals? Golden State all the way. It's still Golden State after all. The main trio just gonna have to pull a lot more weight. But this would be the time to beat the Golden State Warriors and make the finals, and if they can, even win an NBA championship. The narrative around Damian Lillard would change forever, because you can never take away an NBA championship and potentially a finals MVP. But Game 1 would start with the same old, and of course seeing the old ghost haunting Damian Lillard. Game 1 would see Damian Lillard and CJ combine for 11 of 31 and 10 turnovers, seeing them lose 116-94, which already doesn't make for a good starting point for the two. But Game 2 would change everything. A 65-50 score at halftime, Damian Lillard and CJ hitting on all cylinders, and the bench was contributing a lot towards the game. This is what people wanted to see, the lack of depth of the Warriors being taken advantage of by the Blazers, and it was happening in real time. The Blazers have a real opportunity to steal this series if they keep this up, but then CJ and Dame shot 6 of 22 combined in the second half and lost the game in the final minute. Game 3, same thing, 66-53 halftime score. Dame and CJ combined for 22, and even for extra measure, Myers Leonard makes 5 threes in the first half. Then somehow they do it again. Stephen Curry goes off for 21 in the second half. Dame and CJ go 7 of 23 combined, and they lose by almost 20. Somehow, some way, they did it again, but now in more brutal fashion. This is one of the teams you cannot afford to let a game slip away from. Now with 3 championships under their belt, the Big Three in Golden State are made for moments like this and have shown the Blazers that a 10-point lead is nothing for them to come back from. While for the Blazers, their leaders still can't get the job done in the most important series of their careers. And now down 3-0 to this team, there isn't any way they're coming back. But we yet again get another offensive masterclass from both teams. 36 combined points from Klay and Steph with 7 threes. And on the other side, it's Myers Leonard showing again that he is going to try his best with 5 of his own threes and 25 points, while Dame and CJ combined for 25 with a halftime score of 69-65 Blazers. But someone has to lose this game and someone has to stop the hot streak. And as Klay Thompson would tie this game on 111-111 with a minute and 48 left, both teams went cold, brick after brick, turnover after turnover. No one could take the lead. Damian Lillard even had an opportunity to win this game to extend the series, but would miss the final shot to give us the first overtime of the series. But it would also be the last one, as Draymond Green would make the game deciding 3 and completing the sweep of the Portland Trailblazers. And guess what? The headlines were speaking about after the fact: Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum dropping the ball. Damian Lillard averaged 22 points and shot under 30% from the field, and CJ McCollum shot under 40% in this series himself. Then when you add the multiple 10-point or more leads going into halftime, where they played badly after the fact and dropped the games, it really continues to make you think about the future of this duo and this team. Can they really make it happen? Was this just a lightning in a bottle type of playoff situation? There's so much to talk about when it comes to the Blazers and Damian Lillard's future, because Lillard is up for his contract extension and many want to see him move to a new team and play with a better player or team altogether to actually compete for something. When his contract runs out, he'll be 29 going into 30 and start into the twilight of his prime that can be used outside of Portland. If he stays, he risks not doing much else with Portland unless something miraculous happens. And if he leaves and chooses his own path, we can see a future where Lillard is competing in a better situation for the rest of his career. For now, Lillard is known for his 2-game winning shots in the playoffs, his streak of amazing scoring in the regular season, and his constant flaming out in the playoffs. Either he can try to figure it out with the Blazers or hope to change things soon. Which way will he and the Blazers go into the offseason? Well, let's just see if they improve on a conference finals run or stay as stagnant as ever. The Portland Trailblazers have made it to their first conference finals in almost 20 years. It took a while, but you can argue the Blazers are in a prime time position to either take advantage of what they just did or somehow crash and burn, and we all consider this a 1-year peak. Due to seeding, they were getting the easiest second round matchup they can get to set them up to the conference finals, which isn't a knock on them in any way. But if they want to have a much easier time with a Damian Lillard led team, you have to keep improving in any ways possible. So with the offseason of 2019 on the horizon, we get a lot of news that either makes Blazers fans optimistic or very critical. First, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum would have their contract extended for the future. For Damian Lillard, it's a $196 million deal that runs until 2025. And for CJ, it's $100 million until 2024. So you know what that means. Neil Ashley, who got these contracts done, is also getting his contract extended until 2024 this summer. So I guess that means he still sees a reality where Dame and CJ can win something together and bring a championship to Portland. Now with Damian Lillard, sure, to an extent, but with CJ's extension, for sure, it had to come down to the friendship of the two. The team needs to be better, or Dame needs to be better, for this team to make it to the finals and win it. And we are now confirmed to be having this train keep on rolling with a very underwhelming playoff duo. But fine, if they're forced to deal with these two, and now Terry Stotts, who gets extended until 2022 himself, this core around them has to be something special. Well, to start it off, they re-signed Rodney Hood to a 2-year, $21 million deal, signed NBA draft buzz Mario Hezonja, and would add their hands into the Jimmy Butler to Miami trade to finally get someone they wanted a few years ago in Hassan Whiteside, trading away Myers Leonard and Maurice Harkless to be the starting center as Yusuf Nurkic was still healing from injury. And to the people thinking it, I'll go on and finish your thoughts. Yes, this was not a lot. In fact, the reason it was like this is because the Blazers were over the salary cap and didn't have much room to do basically anything. And that's because according to their cap table, their big three is Dame, CJ, and Hassan Whiteside, all making over $27 million a season. Is this a recipe for success? Not in any way. This is one of the worst big threes in the league, and I'm only calling it a big three because of the money invested in each of them. They went from having a lot of depth to barely having any at all to speak of because of this trade. The only saving grace is that Hassan Whiteside's deal is a one-year player option, so his contract can be rebuilt after the season if he wants to stay. But if they let him leave, then, well, you gave up a lot for him. But considering where this team is just a few months ago, there is no way a conference finals appearance is back in the picture. But ESPN did have them rated as a 47-win team though, so the offensive firepower they owned might be seen as so good that it can lead them to wins and just enough to be able to make it back to the playoffs as a decent seed. But things can get even worse considering how empty this team looks in the grand scheme of things, losing so much of their identity last year from free agency alone. And with a 5-9 start to the season, they go even deeper into their offense first identity and sign Carmelo Anthony, now more willing to play a lesser role and make for a very entertaining offensive core with Damian Lillard, CJ, and himself. But it didn't mean a lot of wins were going to come from it. By the All-Star break, the Blazers were going through a real season from hell considering where they were last season. 25-30 run. The recently signed Rodney Hood suffered a season-ending Achilles injury. Zach Collins suffered a shoulder injury that needed long-term surgery. And while the Blazers had a top 3 offense in the NBA, they also give up some of the most points in the league per night, because when you have a backcourt of Dame and CJ and your center is Hassan Whiteside, someone who is proven to be very overrated when it came to his defense, it's free eats every night. In fact, they would try to trade for a defensive threat in Trevor Ariza in late January, but this is 2020 we're talking about here. So Trevor Ariza is 34 years old at this point. Yeah, it's over. The Blazers are in hell and they are setting themselves up for it. But as usual, the man of the hour just had to make his first ever conference finals and is motivated to get back there. So of course, he's going to ball out in his best season yet to try to get him back to that same spot.
Sense of how much Hassan Whiteside will clog the middle for the Trailblazers. Lillard, deep three to start things off.
Got Allen on the switch up top. A flurry of ball moves between the wickets. Step back and launch that three. Surveys the scene. He's got 5. He's got 4. He works on Dinwiddie. Step back, a 3. Got it.
Really keeping the ball out of the paint so there's not that dribble draw dish.
Dame works on LeVert. Backed him off with a tough left-hand dribble and steps back for that 3. He weighs 265. Lillard into the lane. Bulldogs up at him with the left hand.
Kevin.
That is entertainment. Dame work his way up the floor, make that off the shot, and score the 3, which gives him
60 points. 60 points in an absolute carry job for the Blazers, but the only issue was that the Blazers were so bad that they would end up losing that game, which should speak volumes of how bad the Blazers were if a 60-point performance from one man wasn't enough to win a game. But he would end up doing it again versus the Warriors in late January, and add alongside 2 Player of the Week awards where he would average in that span 48 points per game, 10 assists, shot 57% from 3 while making 8 a game and went 5-1. You just cannot deny the talent that is Damian Lillard and how much drive he has to go on and try to bring the Blazers back to that same glory. It even got so bad that there were real debates about Damian Lillard being better than Stephen Curry due to this outburst, but of course, that was during a time when Curry was out for the entire year due to injuries, so there's no way people made this debate in good faith. But the unfortunate thing was that this was not the standard. It would be cool if it was, but it wasn't. But it's still unfortunate to say that despite these great performances, these are what it takes to get this team to win the games consistently, and that is not a good place to be as a unit. But despite the negative record, you cannot deny the talent that is Damian Lillard. He would make yet another All-Star game appearance, but would end up missing it due to a groin injury. And after the fact, you already know what happens next. A certain C word would end up ruining a brand of a particular beverage, and of course the NBA would be moved to the Disney bubble in Orlando, Florida. For every team I talked about in this context, it was either a lock for a playoff seed or a team just not in it. But for the first time, we have a team that is being threatened to be kicked out of the bubble, and of course, that is the Blazers, who are the 9th seed and 3 games behind the 8th seeded Grizzlies. But due to the bubble, we would see the creation of the play-in tournament, so the Blazers are not entirely out of the playoff race, but they cannot risk losing more games or be kicked out of playoff contention. So what do the Blazers do? It's what they do best, and that's rely on Damian Lillard once again. 29 points in the OT win versus the Grizzlies, 45 points against the Nuggets, 51 against the 76ers, another 61-point masterclass against the Dallas Mavericks, and to top it all off, a 42-point win against the Nets and a tight 1-point victory. And yes, every single one of these performances from the regular season to the bubble was necessary, with none of these wins being blowouts or even a convincing one. If Lillard has an off night, the Blazers lose. Simple as that. Again, we are watching Damian Lillard at his peak, purest form, and it's a shame that time and time again, Damian Lillard either doesn't have enough talent around him to lead or just can't get the job done by himself. For this amazing 8-game sample, he'll be awarded as the NBA Bubble MVP, which a lot of people had some fun making jokes about, but altogether, he'll be a part of the All-NBA second team despite the negative 35-39 final record and an 8th seed ranking. You can consider this season a mess on all accounts, and possibly a waste of Damian Lillard's talents, averaging a career high 30 points a night and somehow having a negative record with a season like that. But with an amazing 8 versus 9 matchup versus the Grizzlies, where CJ McCollum would shine for 14 fourth quarter points to seal the game 126-122 and make it to the playoffs as the 8th seed. That's all they were, a sacrificial lamb to the belly of the beast that is the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers, led by LeBron James at point guard. Yes, remember that time? And Anthony Marshawn Davis. Now, the funny thing is that you did have people who thought the Blazers would stand a slight chance solely because of Damian Lillard, but if you were even slightly logical in your thinking, you knew the Lakers were going to dominate. But wait, Game 1 would be a shock to the system, to everybody. 34 points for Dame, 21 for CJ, and the Blazers locking down Anthony Davis for only 8 of 24 shooting and a 100-93 win, showing the Blazers do have life. Maybe the Blazers can try to outscore one of the best defenses in the NBA. Maybe the Blazers can take advantage of a bubble venue that doesn't have home court advantage. Maybe the Blazers can show themselves to be a real threat, and if they can keep this up and do what works, they can pull off what will be the upset of the season. But that's when AD and LeBron woke up, said, ain't no way we're gonna let this happen, and cleaned house. They proceed to win the next 4 games with barely any pushback from the Blazers, with Damian Lillard being injured for the final game, and the expected outcome would proceed to happen, ending what is definitely a disappointing season for the Blazers. Yes, a team that made the conference finals, flaming out the next season being under 500 and making no positive change, is a disappointment, and it can only get that much worse. Good news is Hassan Whiteside's money is off the table. However, with Dame and CJ's money taking up most of the cap space, there isn't a lot they can do unless they want to split this duo, which we all know won't happen. If the Blazers want to contend, they gotta get creative and make something happen. Otherwise, it'll be the same story every season, and the Portland Trailblazers will be one of the most stagnant teams in the NBA for a long time. Damian Lillard just averaged 30 points, played his best basketball of his career, and all you get out of it was an 8th seed and a negative record. Damian Lillard, also going into the 2021 season, will be turning 30 years old, and it's go time at this point. He's in the twilight of his prime, and the time is ticking for both his career and potentially his time with the Portland Trailblazers. So far, he has only won 4 playoff series in 7 years, and his best teammate he has ever added to his team outside of CJ McCollum is Jusuf Nurkic. Jusuf fucking Nurkic. Damian Lillard has to go because the Blazers haven't done enough since LaMarcus Aldridge and the rest of that core left long ago. But with Hassan Whiteside's money off the table and his value plummeting, they have a lot of money on the table to do a nice retool for another potential deep playoff run. So how do the Blazers go about another pivotal summer? Making a lot of underrated moves. First, they received back Enes Kanter in a draft day trade from the Celtics to be another great backup center to the Blazers, or a place starter in the case of Nurkic going down again. Second, they signed back Carmelo Anthony to a short deal and give other deals to Derrick Jones Jr. and Rodney Hood. And finally, they trade their 16th pick in the draft in Isaiah Stewart, Trevor Ariza, and a 2021 first-round pick to the Houston Rockets for their newest starter in Robert Covington. So we have the same thing as last year. All offense, and the only defense is in one player, in Robert Covington. This will be another season where the offense will be the defining factor of the success, and where the defense will be one of the worst in the league. It's a small improvement, but not still anything near enough to compete without some sort of luck. And with the pure chaos that is the Western Conference, they are once again predicted to be outside of the playoffs, with ESPN predicting them to only win 38 games and be the 9th seed, which is still good for the play-in, but no respectable team should be aiming for that. And while I could go over the same song and dance about the Blazers being mid, Dame being Dame, and the team itself not being enough, I won't torture you again with the same story. In the 2021 NBA season, the Trailblazers, one of the most polarizing teams in the league. The only way the Blazers can beat you is by outscoring you with their perimeter offense, averaging 116 points a night and being the second best three-point shooting team. And guess who leads that route? Damian Lillard making 4 a night and being top 3 in made threes that season. But on the flip side, you have the Blazers giving up 114 points a night and letting teams make 47% of their field goals and being near in the bottom 3 and three-point defense. So it's the same as it'll ever be. Their identity throughout the years have been the same because of their coach, and it's only created the same results except one singular time. So how are things looking by the All-Star break? A 21-14 record, and they're actually the 5th seed, so far so good. The system is keeping them out of the play-in, and they are good enough to be over 500, and the offseason moves that they made are absolutely looking like it's valid in every way. And again, led by Dame Dollar himself with yet another All-Star appearance and not stopping his run from last season, looking as good as he did then, as a truly one of the best point guards in the NBA, trying everything he can to take this team to the top. And the crazy thing is, this season looks to be one of the first wide open races in the Western Conference in a long time. The Utah Jazz is the top seed due to their three-point excellence in defense. You have D-Book and the Suns doing well, and the Lakers, Nuggets, and Clippers falling behind them. No one believes there's a clear team to beat this season in the shortened post-COVID season, and if the Blazers play their cards right, this might be their year. And the front office sees them themselves also, and they would end up trading the expiring contract of Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood for the breakout Toronto Raptor in Norman Powell, who provided even more shooting and scoring on a cheaper long-term deal compared to Gary Trent. So the Blazers have their system, and it continues to do what they do. They end their season winning the last 10 out of their 12 games and finish with a 42-30 record, a strong turnaround from last year with a lot of solid changes that made it happen. They'd even avoid the play-in tournament, finishing as the 6th seed, which isn't the best, but let's not act like a 3 versus 6 matchup can't end in an upset. And it goes without saying, but Damian Lillard for a strong season would end up making yet another All-NBA team, this time on the 2nd team, but none of this matters anymore. At this point in his career, it's all about putting your all into winning a championship, and we've seen Damian Lillard trying his best, but now with the current standing in the Western Conference, this is the year to do it. And like a few years ago, we start off our journey with a team entirely made for Damian Lillard to dominate. The 3rd-seeded Denver Nuggets, led by Nikola Jokic, and is dealing with major injuries across the board. Jamal Murray is down, Gary Harris is down, and Will Barton is down. That's Denver's 2nd leading scorer, one of their best perimeter defenders, and another primary scorer down for the count. Jokic has been shown that he can lead a team with not a lot of talent around him, but in the playoffs, things are different, and the lack of perimeter defense for Damian Lillard is going to be the primary reason that he can take over this series. But guess what? One of the most anticipated first-round series of the year, according to ESPN, is also going to be the most unpredictable. ESPN has this series split across the board, with most seeing it go down to 7 games. You have Damian Lillard, who can average 30 or more for the series, and you have Jokic, who can cook both Nurkic and Enes Kanter in the post. Both teams also having glaring weaknesses on both sides that can be exploited, but only one team can win 4 out of the 7 games, and many people are sitting back to see how this goes. Games 1 and 2 would be everything that people expected it to be, with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum combining for 55 points, and the Blazers would make 19 threes as a unit in a huge 123-109 win, showing just how great this series will be and how weak the offensive unit of the Nuggets are being, with injuries all over the board that they are facing. But game 2 would see Jokic wake up, score 38, and 5 other players scoring 10 or more, and most importantly, avoiding a 42-point masterclass from Damian Lillard, Lillard, who was balling out to try to force a 2-0 series lead, but the defense of the Blazers would end up burning them. Again, both teams are trying to exploit each other with their weaknesses, and it's entertaining to watch. Whether it's Damian Lillard forcing Jokic to guard him, or Jokic putting the Blazers front court in an absolute blender, it's must-watch TV every single game. Game 3 was primarily controlled by the Nuggets, with their entire starting lineup scoring 10 or more, and of course, Jokic leading the way with 36 points, and once again, Damian Lillard scoring 37 just wasn't enough. The glaring red flag that is the Blazers defense and the pure might of Nikola Jokic is overpowering the Blazers, despite them not being very healthy. But the Blazers would catch a break with Jokic having a rare bad game alongside Damian Lillard shooting 1 of 10, but luckily their trade prize and Norman Powell carried all the weight, scoring 29 in a near perfect game to dominate 115 to 95. 2-2 series tie, and both teams in their wins are absolutely abusing the other team's weaknesses. And now we have 3 games left. One team has to win 2 and move on to the next round. And a certain someone knew exactly what he had to do.
Gordon acquired in that deadline deal. Coming over from Orlando. What an acquisition he's been. Most his guys, GA, after that game 4 in Portland. As Lillard strokes one from deep.
Right there for a long time in the thick of the conversation for MVP. And that is an example of how you want to make it tough for Jokic to finish. And my goodness gracious.
Rivers playing a big role. Here he is defending Lillard. 6 to shoot. Lillard at patented step back splash. Lillard licking his chops, shoots over Howard and hits. He has been massive for Denver. Lillard, deep 3.
Rise up and be free with that mid-range.
And boy, has the 22-year-old answered the bell tonight. Lillard telling him to get out of his way. Lillard on a 3. And he hits.
Oh my goodness.
Damian Lillard, the late game assassin.
22 points. The Blazers were down by as much as 22 points, and this series could have been as good as done. But Damian Lillard just kept going and going and going, 3 after 3, bucket after bucket, assist after assist, and finally the Nuggets ran out of steam. But it wasn't over yet. In fact, Damian Lillard had to keep being great and send this game into overtime to keep this comeback going, scoring 38 points and dishing 10 dimes to try to take this 3-2 lead and win this game in 6 back in Portland. And guess what? Damian Lillard just kept it going.
Offsets what Dame has done here.
Lillard! Does Lillard have some more late game magic up his sleeve? Gets it back, launches deep 3, splash! Wow! A night where he has done everything right. He leaves the door open. Lillard! He is a killer! Here he comes again. Lillard steps back, fires, banks it in again!
Of course, this game had to be even more dramatic, down by as much as 9 points, scoring every single point in the period, and making the game-tying shot in ridiculous fashion to send this game into double overtime. Damian Lillard is having an all-time great playoff game, and all they need to do is win and to take it back to Portland, or we'll be at this potentially forever. But in this second overtime period, we'd all be horrified by the results. CJ McCollum, who already wasn't having a good game, would miss all of his shots and had a very crucial turnover in the final 10 seconds, stepping out of bounds, alongside some questionable decisions from Robert Covington, also giving up free points and trying to do things I've never seen him do before. These very crucial mistakes in a tight game ended up ending everything, and seeing the Blazers lose in a crucial and winnable game in double overtime, 147 to 140. This was a game where Damian Lillard scored 55 points and made 12 threes, and for extra style points literally put the fear of God into Austin Rivers. This was meant to be the game the Blazers won to get 1 inch closer to a potential finals run. But no, it was taken away by the very people Damian Lillard relied on, and after a gut punch like that, Dame didn't have another one in him, and the Blazers would lose yet another first-round series in an offensive battle won by the Denver Nuggets. And not just any Denver Nuggets team, a Denver Nuggets team without some of the most offensive and defensive pieces. Yet again, another blow to the Portland Trailblazers and Damian Lillard. Enough is enough. After many years of underachieving and disappointment, the Damian Lillard in Portland era needs to be discussed. In the early years, you can point the finger at Dame for his lack of impact come playoff time, but in the last few years, it's been entirely on the front office and the coach for creating a system that isn't championship viable. But the show, unfortunately, must go on, and the duo of Dame and CJ will never be split. But there is one man who was never promised a permanent spot, and that's Terry Stotts, who mutually parted ways in the offseason as the Blazers would go for a new image for themselves as a team. And the image they'd be going for would be something more balanced, focusing both on offense and defense rather than just all offense. But the pick they'd make would surprise a lot of people, as the next coach would be hired would be the former Finals MVP, Chauncey Billups, who to this point only has 1 year of service as a coach in the NBA as an assistant for the Los Angeles Clippers. An interesting choice, but if his job is to improve the defense, is Neil Ashley going to give him any pieces to base a defensive group around, especially when your backcourt is Dame and CJ McCollum? Not at all. They proceed to sign back Norman Powell to a long-term deal, sign Ben McLemore, and trade for Larry Nance Jr. from the Cleveland Cavaliers. You can't exactly make a team play defense when there isn't defensive pieces to make something out of. But the summer of 2021 for the Blazers, despite Terry Stotts' headline, wasn't even the biggest story. Nope. It was the NBA celebrating their 75th season as a league and releasing their top 75 list. And who made that list? Damian Lillard. Now, throughout this entire video where I talked about his career in full detail, please tell me what screamed one of the best point guards to ever do it, let alone one of the best 75 players of all time. I know when it came to their top 50 list, it was still going to stay permanent with the people that were already there. But with the next 25 added, are you really going to tell me that Damian Lillard deserved to be on that list? Now, if you ask me, Damian Lillard is carried legacy-wise by the moments he had in his career, and that's it. It wasn't about accolades like a lot of these other people. It's just straight up the moments, the big moments that he had that defines his entire career. The game winner versus Houston, the game winner versus OKC, the 60-point games in 2019, and his 55-point masterclass against Denver. Take those moments away, and we have a man who only won 4 playoff series in his entire career and has a decent amount of All-NBA and All-Star appearances. Now, I'm fully aware that this list was made by a list of media members, former and current players, and even coaches, but the entire NBA sphere had a nice dunking session on Damian Lillard for a few weeks and defending others for not making the list, like the most common name you see out there, Dwight Howard. But as the season starts, people were really interested to see how this potential new era for the Blazers were going to go with a new game plan and a new team philosophy. But things would go south really fast because by New Year's Eve, the Blazers are nowhere near where they used to be, and the coaching change may have been one of the worst things they could have ever done, or at the bare minimum, the man they chose to lead a team wanting to make the playoffs. Losing the last 11 out of their 13 games and owning a 13-22 record, this is the worst start the Blazers have had in a long time. Even Damian Lillard, fresh off of winning a gold medal in the Tokyo Olympics, is struggling hard. 24 points per game, a career low in field goal percentage, and a career low in 3-point field goal percentage. And the team is struggling because of this. But soon it would all make sense as he would be diagnosed with a lower abdominal injury that would require surgery and would sideline him for the rest of the season. And with him down for the count and the Blazers losing more games, so much would change all around him. GM Neil Ashley will be fired for breaking the code of conduct within the organization and be replaced by Joe Cronin. Norman Powell and Robert Covington will be traded to the Clippers, and now we would finally see the split of a lifetime happen.
It's the end of an era, as we mentioned at the top of the show. After 8.5 seasons in Portland, CJ McCollum, a Blazer no more, breaking up that dynamic backcourt of he and Damian Lillard, one that saw the postseason every year since drafting McCollum a year after Dame. As for the details of the trade, McCollum, along with Larry Nance and Tony Snell, head to New Orleans, and Portland in turn gets Josh Hart and 3 other players in return. They'll also get a protected first-round pick and 2 second-round picks.
Yep, Joe Cronin arrives and he says it's over. The current era of Dame and CJ has to end as the Blazers look to go in a new direction, at least when it comes to helping out Damian Lillard, because as we all know, those two together were just not going to win a championship no matter what you try to do. Many on top of many playoff appearances, but no success to speak of. And an aging duo, it's time for the Blazers to cut their losses to try to find their next era of Blazers stars. And you know what that means. Damian Lillard might be on the chopping block next, and it's only a matter of time. And with a 27-55 record, you know what the goal is. Tank hard, get talent, and move on. Or use that new talent to try to bring in someone to continue this Damian Lillard era. But of course, you just never knew what the Blazers were thinking. They go on and draft Kentucky guard Shadon Sharpe, and would even pay Anthony Simons to show more and more how the franchise is moving. But Damian Lillard actually wanted to stay with the team. He wanted to see if he could still lead a team and try to push for them to at least try and continue things with him. So that turned into them trading for Jeremy Grant and giving him a fat contract, re-signing Yusuf Nurkic, and giving money to Gary Payton II. But still, absolutely no dice. Damian Lillard did the exact same thing he did in 2020, tried to put the team on his back the entire season, but unfortunately with no results. 32 points per game, shot the most threes in the NBA at night. The man even scored a career high of 71 points in a game, but the team around him and of course the coaching was just that bad. He couldn't do anything with them, and it's just another year of talent wasted because he didn't want to go and continue his career in a better situation elsewhere and doing all of this for a 33-49 record. And finally, coming to his senses, he does what many people wanted him to do a long time ago and requests a trade.
His conversations with the organization, at least going back several days, that last Monday meeting in Portland, the expectation was he was going to give the organization a chance to get through free agency and see how they could improve the team. And on the opening night of free agency, they committed in Portland $160 million to Jeremy Grant to return to the Blazers, certainly with Damian Lillard in mind. And now, less than 24 hours later, Lillard has asked for a trade. He prefers a trade to the Miami Heat. Now, he does not have a no-trade clause like Bradley Beal did. Certainly, he's got significant years and money left on his deal. When he's 35, 36 years old, he'll be averaging over $60 million a year.
Now, I already went over the mess that was this trade saga in a previous video. Everybody was happy to see him wanting to leave. The only problem was it was a bit later than what people wanted. Now about to turn 33, he's really coming near the end of his prime, and whoever gets him is going to have to be intentional about winning. If he would have done this a few years ago, things most likely would have been a whole lot better because time is truly ticking. But the team who traded for him were unfortunately just as desperate.
Damian Lillard is officially a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. We want to show you the details of this trade, how it came together, which players are involved. Once again, Portland is sending Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis and Dame, that is a scary thought. And then you can see the Trailblazers get a slew of players headlined by Drew Holiday. This is a 3-team deal that also sends DeAndre Ayton to the Trailblazers. The Suns, they get Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. The details of the 3-team trade are on your screen.
Now, to many, including myself, this is the duo we've been waiting for when it came to Damian Lillard. He is now the Robin to one of the best players of our generation in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is desperately wanting to get back to championship status ever since he won in 2021. Again, check out my video about their failure of a retool ever since winning it. But anyone who is anyone seeing this duo being super dynamic, with Lillard being unstoppable at times on the perimeter, while Giannis is unstoppable in the paint. But it was anything but that. From coach hirings and firings in the same season, to not having the best season and figuring out his role with Giannis, and much, much more, it just was a season to forget. Just like 2 seasons ago, despite having less offensive responsibility, playing with a 30-point per game score, his efficiency just wasn't the best, and many people can see that the fit just seemed kind of awkward. If you ask me, Damian Lillard is much more used to being the clear #1 option, and now having to go to mix playing on and off the ball, it's just new for him now in the mid-30s version of Damian Lillard. And considering he's been the man his entire career and maybe even his whole basketball life, basically, it just wasn't a skill he needed to learn. Some of you may disagree, but a lot of players go through that and can never make the transition to the NBA alone if they aren't willing to be more of an off-ball threat rather than an on-ball one. But of course, a drama-filled season gets even worse with Giannis as he got injured late into the year, leaving him alone in the playoffs and seeing him lose to the Bucks in 6 games. And considering he is on an old and aging team with very little room for error, including himself, the stakes next year gets even higher. Giannis could want to leave, leaving Lillard all by himself, and this entire experiment will be a failure, a very swift failure. And things would be even worse for Dame for the 2025 season. Injuries for himself, more team changes that didn't help anything. We'd even see a blood clot scare for Damian Lillard that basically it prematurely ended the season. With yet another meeting with the Indiana Pacers, Damian Lillard and Giannis only played 3 games together in the playoffs altogether, and they lose in 5, with Damian Lillard also sustaining an Achilles injury on top of it. The Giannis and Dame duo has only brought more and more disappointment, even though you can argue that it was doomed from the very start. Damian Lillard arrived during the most critical time in the Giannis era, with Giannis soon to be a free agent, and the Bucks needing to satisfy both him and the fans. And Lillard, unfortunately, became a victim in the crossfire. And once again, due to wanting to appease the Greek freak, the further tearing down of Damian Lillard continues in the offseason.
A lot of breaking news so far today here on First Take. Let's recap a little bit. So first of all, free agent center Miles Turner has now agreed to a 4-year, $107 million deal with the Bucks, plus a player option for year 4. How did we get there? Well, that's because the Bucks then went ahead and waived Damian Lillard. So now they're taking a huge cap hit. There it is. They're waiving Damian Lillard, stretching the remaining $113 million on his contract. That was in order to acquire Miles Turner. What we're hearing is that Giannis Antetokounmpo, Wendy told us earlier, was in on recruiting Miles Turner. Therefore, we would assume now Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to stay in Milwaukee.
Yep, I'm sure you remember this moment of complete shock. About to turn 35 and make $56 million, the Bucks, in a continuous effort to keep Giannis happy and in Milwaukee, would tank their cap space potential and waive Damian Lillard just to sign Miles Turner. It continues to get worse and worse in the last few years of Damian Lillard, and again, you just really hate to see it. But despite all of that, Dame Time has suitors who wants to make use of his talents after he heals. He has suitors all over the NBA in Miami, Boston, Golden State, the absolute works. If they're trying to contend, they will take Damian Lillard on with a cheap contract as soon as his Achilles gets back together. But instead of trying to keep going after a championship in his twilight years, despite teams and organizations believing in him to be an asset when he's healthy, he decided to shock the world once again.
Damian Lillard is headed back to Portland on a 3-year, $42 million deal. Remember 2 years ago when he wanted out of Portland? Then he got traded to the Bucks, and now after being waived by Milwaukee with an opportunity to go anywhere he wanted, Damian Lillard is heading back to where he started.
Back to Portland, Oregon. In all honesty, I was completely confused by the decision until all the reports came out on why, and I can understand. His family and friends are in Portland. He spent most of his adult life in Portland, and at this point of his career, some can argue he's done as much as he could. Being able to retire on your own terms and by the team your career was represented by is not something everyone can do or teams are willing to do. But Joe Cronin rebuilt the relationship with Damian Lillard after the trade, gave him a no-trade clause and a mid-level exception, and Damian Lillard is now back to where it all started. Some may see this as a storybook ending to a rather interesting career, but to many, this is him saying he's retiring from contention, and all the real talks about his career can officially begin. But the real question is, does he deserve grace after all that he has been through, or is the way his career turned out 100% on him at the end of the day? The loyalty debate in the NBA is a very interesting talking point when fans discuss the careers of NBA stars. We praise the ones who are able to make it work and stay most of their careers on one team, but the ones who stay too long when their team isn't showing them anything are always the ones who end up as a huge what if. Damian Lillard is unfortunately one of those players. Throughout this entire documentary, we've seen a mix of Damian Lillard not being good enough to lead a team to the finals and his franchise not able to make deals to make it easier for Dame, or at least have a squad capable of contention. And honestly, that's a fate that you can argue that many players go through. Damian Lillard is unfortunately the poster boy when he made the keep running from the grind comments to Paul George in 2020. And despite his comments being a great clapback, both of them are in very similar spots career-wise all time, except both of them made key choices that dictated everything. For Damian Lillard, he didn't leave when he wasn't shown that he was playing for a quality enough team, while PG did many times. It just didn't work out for him either. But back to Lillard, after all of these years, what can we really say about him? Again, he's only known for the moment and nothing else. And while that isn't a bad thing, he'll be remembered forever. He will also be known for his low lows alongside his high highs. Not leaving Portland soon enough will always be his biggest blunder, alongside the many times he was exposed in the playoffs, where he only won 4 playoff series his entire career. Take away those big moments and he's just a good point guard who is loyal to his franchise, and unfortunately loyal to his franchise to a fault. I understand every man has their morals and values when it comes to that sort of thing, and honestly, I applaud those who really do want to make it work with the teams they were drafted to. But in life, you just got to know when to pull out and to go on a different road. If he's satisfied with his career and how it turned out, then I guess I am too. But at the same time, him as a #1 option wasn't going to win a championship in Portland. His decision to stay there wasn't going to get him any closer. And overall, he remained as a player who had a decent career, make it to the Hall of Fame, and to some, I guess that's all you can ever want from a guy. But history was written by the victors, and Damian Lillard is nowhere near that. With that being said, tell me what team or player timeline you'd like to see next, your thoughts on this video and topic, and until next time.